Gene, thank you for hopping on. I got to tell you, you were right before we hopped on here. You're letting me know, like, oh, I saw you did the call to action. I'm like, yes, I did, and let me tell you why. And it's not a justification in any form or fashion. It is an admission,
Okay.
because when I was going through everything and I'm diving in, and I've done wholesale terms, I've done, in-person seminars, I've gone out, I got some partners out here for some, they call them HPR builds here in Nashville area. I'm in Middle Tennessee now.
Okay.
So for everybody, you probably know this is not the usual setup. I am in transition at the moment, and we're going to get this party started and rocking very soon, but it's good to be stateside and good to be here with Gene. And I had to know more, and I had to dive in because you cover a ridiculously wide variety of topics within real estate and, how do you say, avenues or ways to approach a specific deal. And
Yeah.
I really love that, because there is an entire section, I believe, of real estate that no one touches, or excuse me, not nearly enough people touch, and almost nobody prepares for when they have this romantic idea of what it would be like to get into real estate. And that is the legal side. That is the asset protection side. That is the wealth management side. And when I saw that you covered a lot of those topics in such a digestible, easy to understand way, it was like, okay, wait a minute. Like, I wanted to have a conversation with you, but now I'm diving in here and going
I
head
appreciate
first.
it. Yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad it caught your attention. People think that traditional real estate is the only way to go, right? Having a bunch of cash or, getting approved by a lender. And there's been suppressed knowledge for one reason or another that there's a wealth of different ways to solve a real estate problem and acquire a property without having to go get approved for credit, or a lot of times even needing, a ton of money. But it's just about having that knowledge, knowing about it, and then learning about it, and then being able to use that knowledge to use the tools to do it effectively. So I push that out there to the people because it changed my life completely. I mean, it changed every millisecond of my life. So I got to get it out there to the people. Glad it got to you.
Oh, no doubt about that. I mean, everything from terms deals, no money down deals, to auction, to trusts, which I think is what I was alluding over to as well earlier. Like, I think trusts are a funny topic because the real players know how to use them. And I've been very blessed and fortunate in my life to run into some very real players. Hence this call here with you. Thank you for your time, and I don't want to waste it. The real players utilize trusts, and others are daunted by it. It's too daunting. It's too scary for them. But you don't even just use them. You have an entire layered structure that you go through pretty
Yes.
adamantly. And
Yes.
something I didn't expect, which also has happened to me and other partners I've worked for in the past, is how many lawyers don't like you. Like, I know you've done one or two responses, but there are quite a lot of stitches out there of lawyers that are completely trying to disagree with you. And I've talked with the same thing for title companies. I've talked with them all day, every day, and they say the same thing every time, right? Walk me through here how you came to the conclusion of trusts, the value of them, and like, what should people be doing to stop being so daunted by them, because it's not some black hat mysterious wealth preservation tactic. It's like right out in the open, and it's pretty, some of the language is more clear than other laws, but yet people are afraid of this.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like it's been put out there in a way to make people afraid because trusts are the most powerful tool that we can use, whether it's in business, asset protection, estate planning. Trusts are the underpinning entity of pretty much every institution in the world. I mean, if you can trace back the paperwork, Everything is owned by trust. I mean, you can look on a deed on public record and see that a trust owns the promissory note, owns that debt, and the security instrument, and those are called REMIC trusts. They're real estate mortgage investment conduits, right? So I said that to say it's been put out there to be, some complicated, crazy thing that only the wealthy use, and that's just not true. But it's hard to come across this information because there are very few people that know about it and then are willing and can articulate it in a way that makes it understandable and digestible for the people that really need it, which is just regular people like you and I and our audiences. So when I got into real estate, I was doing real estate the traditional way and going through banks, getting financing. My business partner was is a doctor, and so I was the guy on the ground. He was the financing arm, but we were still having difficulty getting credit. And so for 3 years, in 3 years, I did 3 fix and flips, and that's pretty much less than minimum wage. I was running a landscaping company at the same time. Was fate would have it, I ended up getting fired or quitting my job. That's still up in the air, right? But that happened, and then we lost a deal where we would have made the most profit, up to that point, and it was because of the financing. So I had to make a decision. Either bet on myself, get into investing 100%, or go back, get another job and start at the bottom and kind of work my way up. Well, if I fail at investing, I mean, that's going to be catastrophic. I got a family, I've got bills, right? Just like everybody else. But I also felt the same way if I go start another job and start at the bottom, that's catastrophic too. So I might as well bet on myself. But there was a problem. I didn't have the money that I needed, and the banks were giving us a difficult time, and it almost seems like they want us to lose at times. But heard people out there just saying that, they can do these no money deals or no credit checks. And I was kind of skeptical of it, but if people are out here doing it, I want to find out. So I started researching, but I had to make that decision first. And once I decided and went that direction, there was no escape route, no plan B. Well, doing research, I found a method where we can take over the existing loan, the underlying loan, and own that property without having to qualify for the debt. So we leave that debt in place. We just make the payments to the bank. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, this is amazing. This is spectacular. But is it true? First off, because it sounds too good to be true. And then if it is true, how in the world do I do it, right? So I just continued to research, and I found a lot of different people online that were doing this. However, there's a right way to do it, and then there's ways that other people do it. And the only right way to buy an investment property without having to qualify for that loan, by taking over the existing loan and getting the deed transferred to you, the only righteous way to do it and bulletproof way to do it is by owning it in a trust. And so that's what got me started down the path with trust. So I started this as an investor to invest. And when I learned that, the only bulletproof way to do subject to deals was to put it in a trust, I just started to dive in that more. And my mentor is the founding president of the National Real Estate Investors Association, and he's the founding president of the Georgia Real Estate Investors Association. So he's been doing these deals for 40 some years and buying them in land trusts. So once I went down that rabbit hole, that's where I found out that's where all of the power was with trust. The real estate was just the cherry on top, because we've done a lot of different things now for not only myself, my portfolio, but then clients around the country to help protect their assets, to buy and sell assets privately. Because once an asset is in a trust, like real estate, it's no longer considered real estate in the terms of the law. It's no longer real property. It's personal property. And that makes it different. You can convey that differently. And we've worked with many lawyers around the country and many title companies around the country. My thing is, when you talk to them, you have to come in sounding like you know what you're doing as well, for them to listen to you. So here's the thing. We use it for investing and now asset protection and estate planning, now that I've built a portfolio. But even if you're a regular person, right, and you just own your home, think about it. We pay taxes in life always. So even when we die, there's death taxes, and that's collected through probate court. And probate when we die, our assets go into probate and then they get passed down. So there's lawyers' fees, there's court fees, there's the other professionals like assessors and all, just a bunch of stuff where they take the money from our estate. So it's like we file a lawsuit against ourselves. So even if you only own your home, you should have that home in a trust, because a trust is the only entity that circumvents probate. You don't have to go to probate. So now instead of paying that death tax, though, your home is passed seamlessly to your children or whoever that beneficiary is, and now that blessing doesn't become a burden once we die. It remains a blessing because we're not leaving them to make hard decisions. So whether you're the person who just owns a home or you're an investor, business owner, entrepreneur, operating in trust and having that set up is definitely super beneficial.
So then, I mean, my first question would be, it's obviously like, I don't know, $50,000 of lawyer fees, and it probably takes 6 months to set up a trust, right? I mean, of course, right?
That's it. Yeah, that's what most people think. And now here's the thing, there's trusts that do, cost that much and take that long to set up. But are you a person with, $10 million in assets, $20 million in assets? If so, that's what you should be thinking about, right? But most people are not. So to those that aren't, land trusts, and we use land trusts and we use personal property trusts for any other asset. And most attorneys aren't aware of land trusts. Good ones are. Everybody thinks revocable trust, living revocable trust, and those are going to run you, anywhere from $2,000 to $6,000 with an attorney. But using a land trust and a personal property trust is asset protection. So that protects our assets and gives us estate planning. Right. So if you're just a regular person, you should not even be inquiring into a private irrevocable trust, in my humble opinion, because you're not worth that much money to change your entire paradigm in life, and operate that way. You should be thinking about a living revocable trust for your estate planning. So that way you can control those assets from the grave and you can control them while you're here as well. But also, for asset protection, you own your home in a land trust, and then we make our beneficiary of that trust our revocable trust. So now we're protecting the asset and we're planning our estate by having it in that living revocable, and we're private. Any cars, trailers, boats, anything that's not real estate, gold, gun collection, whatever, you put that in a personal property trust. And it's very simple. Those are templates. They're templates. So they're not individual to the person. That's why we're able to do it for clients around the country, and at a reasonable rate, right? It's almost not smart to not do it, really, So one more thing, when you go talk to an attorney about this, they're going to tell you to name the trust your name, living trust. If they do that, I recommend that you kindly pack up your things and leave their office, because they've already given away the anonymity right there. If you're going to own something in a trust, then the trust owns it. You don't want your name on that trust, because then people will know, okay, if I sue because this is an investment property, I'm renting it out, and it's the Gene Boykin Living Revocable Trust. Well, I know, and the attorneys know, I can attack Gene Boykin's assets because this house that's owned by this living trust is obviously Gene Boykin's. So if they recommend that to you, seek other professional help, because they're giving away your anonymity right away.
And I've also, everybody, I think at this point, it's becoming more and more common knowledge for anybody in the space. If you've ever done wholesale, if you've ever done anything in real estate and you've traced a list, you've probably come across exactly what he's talking about, where you'll see the property, there's no contact information, and it'll say something trust or family trust. And it's, it's kind of that thing you just skip over, delete the row, move on, get on with your calls, right? But once you start pulling this in and you start getting into the game, it becomes very clear very quick. By the way, I've had title attorneys say that to me. Like, you should name it this, and I just kindly ask, why would we do X, Y, or Z? Or they'll come back with, which you probably hear more and more, 100 times more than myself, would be, oh, but why don't you just structure your LLCs in a specific way versus doing this? So if you want to just burn that objection for me real quick? That would be
Yeah. Well, LLCs, I mean, it's a limited liability corporation, right? Limited liability company. So we assume that we don't have any liability, which we don't unless the corporate veil can be pierced. And that means that you did something wrong during your ownership of that LLC. And when I say something wrong, it really could be as simple as you signing a document and you just signed it your name, and that's it, for that LLC. You need to sign your name, comma, as manager, or whatever position it is that you're playing in that LLC. Because if you don't, the corporate veil can be pierced. And now if the corporate veil is pierced, all of your personal assets could be attached to whatever litigation that could happen. Right. The other thing is it's a government, it's a creature of the government, creature of the state. So there's annual fees that you have to pay. You have to keep minutes with your meetings. And I mean, there's just a bunch of procedures and monitoring that goes on. Not only that, you can track down who the owner is. So that privacy really isn't there. There's a couple of states that make it incredibly difficult to find out who the owner is. So when we do start an LLC, we at least do it in Wyoming, but it can still be found nonetheless. So those are things with an LLC that it's not recommended. Here's the other thing. Attorneys, I love them. I've got nothing against attorneys. I love attorneys. I've got an attorney on retainer. I pay him monthly, So I love them, but they get paid for their time. They get paid hourly. They get paid those fees. So if you are an entrepreneur or a business owner and you've got a lot going on, you're out there making moves. You're a go-getter, right? No, pun intended. They call us annuity clients, right? Because we're going to be paying them annually for these LLCs. If we're getting a different LLC every rental we get, or if we're a serial entrepreneur and we're starting a bunch of different businesses, we're annuity clients for them. They can count on it that we're going to be paying them annually. It's different with a trust. Once you set that trust up, there are no annual registrations that you do. We don't register that with the Secretary of State. Right. So the annuity being an annuity client is not a thing. Trusts are good for 21 years. 21 years. You have 21 years. Right. So there's that part, and the privacy of ownership, the limited liability that you have with the right trust. You have no personal liability. The beautiful thing about a trust is, and there was a stitch done by an attorney on one of a TikTok video I made, and he says there's a video of this guy going around, and he says that you should have a trust instead of an LLC, and that you're not personally liable with a trust. Well, yes, you are. You hold equitable title in a land trust as the beneficiary, so your personal assets can be attached. And I'm like, well, he is right in that sense. However, it just depends on how your trust is written up. So for our trust, which to me is amazing, we only own the earnings, avails, and proceeds. We have not, nor have we ever held equitable or legal title in that trust. The trust holds that. So it pretty much says in plain English that all of the bad things, the management responsibility, the liability, the responsibilities to do anything are the responsibility of the trust. But the beneficiaries, we own the earnings, avails, and proceeds. That's the money. That's all the good things. So we control it because it can't move without us as the beneficiary. And then we don't have any liability on the headache side of things. So it just depends on the level of trust that you have as well, that paperwork. Does that make sense?
100%. And
I'm getting a little nerdy here, but
no, this is great. And
stuff.
a couple things I wanted to throw in there as you're saying this. I kind of just generally wanted to look up. You're talking about this lasts 21 years. So just to put that into perspective, for people on average nationwide, which I know is a cardinal sin in real estate because it's so locally based, but just for data's sake, real estate has gone up between 150 to 200% on average in the United States, which is what we're talking about here. over the last 21 years. Now, that is no indicator of what will happen in the next 21 years. But if you did this strategy, assuming the laws were the same 21 years ago, you would have already had almost a double, increase. Now, that seems relevant to protect properly. And the other thing as well that I wanted to also look up here is, this notion of LLCs protecting you is very real, but if if corporate veils are being, due to studies, are being pierced 40 to 60% of the time in legal cases, right? Because you have to understand, someone's taking a claim against you and bringing you to court. It doesn't matter whether you're innocent or proven guilty. Yes, you're innocent until proven guilty, but you are defending yourself against that claim. So if they have the ability to pierce that veil for whatever reason, 40 to 60% of the time, which again, these are off the top statistics, so I would love to dive into these more, and I'm taking notes here that I continue to do so when we hop off for my own sake. That's an alarmingly high number. And that should make this trust thing that doesn't necessarily cost $50,000 and 6 months and 100 hours of 100 billable hours for lawyers. That should make that much more relevant for people, and maybe, I don't know, bust a few myths about the LLC structure. So that's what I was talking about also, that you kind of touched in, and you said you were getting nerdy. Feel free to dive as deep or shallow as you would like.
In terms of, got some numbers to keep me nerdy.
Oh no, man! I love it though. I mean, that's seriously, when I put that call to action in, it was one of the layered structures that you did there, and that's the other thing with that I wanted to ask here is, like, at what point would you recommend people start to do this? The reason why I ask this is I think most people think the same as being generous. When I have money, I'll be generous. When I've got a $10 million portfolio, I'll start to protect. When I do this, or when I have $1 million in the closet of silver, I'll put that in a property, whatever, right? I think that's a big limiting belief that people had. What would you recommend for anybody that wants to get into space or already is? At what point should they be really diving into this stuff?
I always say, right now. Right. There is no next time. That's the way I live life. Right. Because here's the thing. You mentioned that statistic that 40 to 60% of the time the corporate veil is being pierced. So that's almost like, hey, flip a coin out there. Right. You're with your business. And here's the thing. Lawsuits on average cost an LLC $50,000 to defend. So if it costs $50,000 for you to be found, that you're not liable, did you win? Really? And there, I don't, there's most businesses out here, they can't take a $50,000 hit in legal fees, right? So that in itself is a loss. And then when you flip the coin of 40 to 60% of the time the corporate veil is being pierced, that means that your personal assets can be attached. At that point, they can go after your personal assets. So there is no time like the present to open up a trust. For my real estate, I don't use LLCs. I buy all of my real estate in trust, land trust, or revocable trust if it's not a land trust state. So it's the same language in the trust, just says revocable instead of land trust. That's it. But also, it's not that expensive. For that we do land trust for $1,000, personal property trust for $750. I know of a high level attorney in Florida that does land trust for $1,500, right? So, and then living revocable trust, they're gonna run from $2,500 up to about $5,000 or $6,000, depends on your number of assets. So it's really not that expensive in the scheme of things. And for me, it was easier for me as a beginning entrepreneur operating in trust, knowing that I was protected, knowing that I'll never end up in a courtroom. And that's for two reasons. One, if I'm wrong, I'm going to make it right. I'm going to fix it if I was wrong, if I did something wrong. So I shouldn't end up in a courtroom because I'm fixing it. And I've made mistakes early on in my career that caught up to me in about a year and some change. And it cost me a reasonable amount of money to fix those situations. Now, the other reason we won't end up in court is this. If you're operating in an LLC, that's public record, or just in your own name. when somebody goes to litigate against you, in which America is the #1 country in the world for litigation. So when somebody goes to litigate against you, the attorney is going to, tell them to hold on in their waiting room for a minute. They've got to go do a little research. They're going to go back and look up the owner. They're going to look up that LLC and see what it owns. And if you're low hanging fruit, because they see that an LLC owns this property, it's connected to, the person that owns it. There's a lot of equity. That's low hanging fruit. They can get money. So they'll go back out there and tell your tenant or this person who is doing business with you that's suing you. They'll tell them, hey, we'll take this case and we'll take it on a contingency basis. So that just means we don't get paid unless we get you paid. So they know they can get something, right? And so now they're going after what you got. Now, if you own that asset in a trust, when they look that up on public record, it's an automatic deterrent. Just like you mentioned, when you're looking at leads and you see that a trust owns it, it's like, oh, okay, skip over that, get to the next, because it's going to be hard to track down the trustee and then track down the owner and all that stuff. So attorneys understand that as well. Now, when it's one of our trusts, well, I can tell you what they'll say when they go out to the waiting room. They're going to say, Mr. Potential litigant, you don't have anything here, so we can't take this case. Or if they do take the case by happenstance, they're going to say, yeah, we'll take it, but we need a $10,000 retainer. We need a $5,000 retainer. And most times these fraudulent litigants, they don't have that type of money, so they're not going to litigate, right? So it's just those preventative measures. And this is, Einstein says this: smart people solve problems and geniuses prevent them. It's preventative. That's why I would say utilizing a trust right now is the best way to go, either way.
And anything you can do to get a pro bono lawyer to look away, to look at it, look at the case and go, no, any amount of whatever that turns out to be, 1 in 5, it doesn't even matter. Just like anything you can do to keep that off your back, especially in this, right? Somebody slips, there's just so many, obstacles. I don't want to say obstacles, that's not the right word, but there's so many things. This is real life, and real life happens to real people. So things can happen both outside of your control, outside of whatever, your tenant's control, and it's just like, it genuinely could be a no-fault situation that if they've got kids and they've got family, they're going to protect themselves the best that they can, whether that's find a pro bono lawyer, whether that's whatever, that try to pierce the corporate veil. It doesn't even have to be malicious, which I think, oftentimes these fraudulent claims can be, and oftentimes it is, but at the same time, it doesn't have to be. It just could be don't see eye to eye and real life happen to a real person, and now you're unprotected. And that's the worst case scenario. I think the #1 cause for bankruptcy, which now hits really home to me because I moved from Japan to the United States, is medical bankruptcy. And it doesn't have to be on purpose. It still could be no fault, but like that hits landlords too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
I wanted to dive
real quick.
Go ahead,
quick,
please.
if I could. So I've got a client that is a real estate broker in Florida, and he owns a few rentals. So I'm talking to him, and I ask him, "Hey, have you ever been sued before?" And he says, "Yeah, well, yeah, but it wasn't much. It wasn't much." I said, "Well, how much did it cost you?" He said, "About $10,000." I said, well, I guess it depends on your definition. I was like, well, what happened? So he had a tenant that was moving out, and he did his inspection of the house, and he had to keep the deposit for cleaning fees and other stuff. So he says, I talked to the tenant on the phone, let him know that I was keeping his deposit, and it was, everything was good, right? It was all good. He says, well, about 3 weeks to a month later, I get a call from some legal firm that I'm being sued. And he's like, well, what's going on? His tenant sold his litigation rights for that deposit to a legal firm that does that buys litigation rights from people. So there was no problem when he got off the phone, but since there was some money out there and low hanging fruit, because it was his name on public record that owned that property, the law firm saw that and made their move, bought it. It cost him $10,000 in legal fees.
Guys,
it could have cost $1,000 to protect it.
So just to jump in here, that's why I put that call to action in, exactly what you just said. That's a broker. That guy's a broker. He's
Right.
not a real estate agent. He's a broker, and he still didn't understand some of these tactics, right? I can't remember how many properties you said he has, but I'm assuming it's quite large. You're like, come on, guys. Like this is no brainer stuff that if it's not this crazy, jump on it, don't wait. Really seek the people that have information like this, because the rooms that I've been in, the people that I've connected with, there is a trend. And they all seem to say the same things. Your lawyer is going to disagree with you when you bring this up. Your title attorney is going to disagree with you when you bring this up, and inevitably it happens. And then they shy away from actually doing it, and you're like, you were so close to protecting yourself, right? But again,
Right.
it can be a no-fault situation. That situation you just described there was malicious, and it's crazy to me, to a degree, that it is even viable to have a business model such as that, where there's like clearly that's not everybody's happy in the transaction, but yet the lawyers know I can do this on pro bono. I only need to win 3 out of 5, whatever, and they do the math on it, and you're like, man, spreadsheet math wins again, right? So I wanted to dive in here. Tell me, you alluded to it a little bit earlier, but talk to me about subject to. Because that's another one. Because a big thing that people talk about is auctions or foreclosures, but subject to is a little bit of a degree twist on that I've seen you talk about, and it's like massive for you guys and incredibly creative.
Yes, and incredibly lucrative, honestly. So subject to is simply taking over the existing loan while not becoming personally liable for that debt. However, if we do not make those payments, then we would lose any equity in that property or any money we put into it. So we come in, we don't have to qualify for that loan, jump through those hoops, we can take it over. But for me, I say that we're not buying houses, we're buying problems. Right. But what I came to understand was that most people that are selling their house, they don't want to anyway. They have to, because something happened in life that now made that house go from a blessing to a burden, whether it's financially or physically. So subject to, and the definition that I just said, where we buy it, we're deeded the house by taking over the underlying debt, but do not become personally liable for that debt. That's the definition of subject to. The Barron's, that's in the Barron's real estate dictionary. So that is what subject to is, and it opens up a whole nother realm of real estate, because now you can buy properties that traditional real estate investors can't. Because think about it. A bank is going to cut you off after a certain amount of loans because of your debt to income ratio. Exactly. It doesn't matter. Right. I have students now that have been cut off by the bank that had investment properties. They wanted to keep going. They're doing fine in life. But according to the bank's math, their debt to income ratio doesn't meet their threshold. So they can't lend them any more money. So now if you can go in and buy a house by solving somebody's problem and taking over that existing loan where you don't have to qualify, you can do that in unlimited amount. And think about it. You can buy houses that have no equity. Or you can even buy houses that are upside down. They owe more than what the house is quote unquote valued at, because according to the statistic you just looked up, after 21 years, real estate has increased 150%. So if it's underwater today, it's a good bet that 5 years from now, 10 years from now, it's not going to be underwater anymore. So as long as I can cash flow while I own it, I'm winning. I'm absolutely winning. So that opens up the world of real estate. And so for us, foreclosures, I'm a foreclosure expert. And then a lot of my community members around the country are really, really good at foreclosures as well. And so we'll get to these people before the auction. That way we're not going to the auction where it's the house, we're buying a house sight unseen. The equity's being bid out of it at every turn, at every bid. That's less and less equity that you're going to get. So we don't have to go through that because we're getting to these people before the auction. And then, especially it being in foreclosure, if it's a government-backed loan, we've gotten even more creative in the sense of now we're utilizing their options that the bank's normally not going to tell them about openly, and the governments are historically bad marketers. So the plans that they have to help people save their homes, they're little known. Not many people know about them. So we'll go in and negotiate with the seller. And then when we talk to the lender, we get to restructure that mortgage. So I've got students who they were 38,000 behind the people's homes that they were going after, 38,000 behind, and they didn't have to pay that 38,000. They bought that house, put the 38,000 on the back end of the mortgage, and then just had to start making payments again. So going in with very little money up front, no risk to your personal credit. Of course, you got to do the right thing if you tell a person you're going to take over their mortgage and make those payments, right? But it opens up the world. It doesn't cost us much money up front. So it's a complete game changer for us in real estate. And that's just subject to, that's one acquisition strategy.
So talk to me here then. Some states in terms of, excuse me, pun intended as well, when it comes to buying on terms, some states are a due on sale states, right? So Tennessee, where I am, is a due on sale state. Now, that's a separate matter with who the lender is, because legally that's between them, but due on sale, it is what it is. How does subject to differ from that when you're taking over that? So you don't get a phone call from the lender or the bank that says, hey, all of that's due now. Good luck,
The due on sale clause is typically going to be in the mortgage. So you can best bet all 50 states, either way, there's going to be a due on sale risk when doing a subject to, if you're not buying it in a trust. If you're buying it in a trust, guess what? According to the Garn-St. Germain Act, the banks are prohibited from calling a loan due when the property is transferred into a trust for estate planning purposes. It says it right there. So you have to follow a particular process when buying it in that trust, because if you remember in the beginning, I said that when a home is transferred into a land trust or a trust, it is no longer real estate. It's no longer real property according to the law. It's now beneficial interests of a trust. And so the way that we do it, we're not buying the house. We're buying the interests of the trust. It's transferred into a trust by the seller. We have them authorize the paperwork, sign the necessary paperwork, transfer it into a trust. They're the 100% beneficiary of that trust initially. And then they sign another one-page document assigning us the interests of that trust. And now we own the trust, thus we own the house. So that makes you bulletproof from the due on sale clause. I've got two students in California, and we close with the title company and or a closing attorney on these subject to deals. And so we're talking to their lawyer on a deal. They paid the seller $2,500 and they found a buyer relatively quick. This house, they sold it on terms for $464,000. So they paid $2,500 to the seller, and then they got a 10% down payment from their buyer. So they got a $46,400 or $600 check, something like that. And it's on my Instagram wall. Anyway, so we're talking to their attorney, and they've got a great, real estate closing attorney. We let them know how we close in trust and ask them if they close in trust. We have some interview questions for our title company or closing attorney. That way we show them that we're in control. Long story short, I'm recording the call just because Texas is a one-party authorization state. So we're recording the call, and the attorney, I let him pretty much explain subject to me and what we're doing, right? We're kind of working it out together, but I'm not letting him know I'm quite the expert that I am. I'm letting him be the expert because he's the attorney. So he explains it step by step of what we do. Right? The seller conveys it to the trust. He's the first beneficiary. Then we're assigned the interest of the trust. And the attorney says this, now you're not subject to a reassessment for taxes, right? Because you're just buying the interest of the trust, and you're not subject to the due on sale clause either. I said, yes, according to section J, chapter 103 of the Garn-St. Germain Act. And he says, yes, yes. So he said, you guys, there's a lot of attorneys that, don't know about this. So this is recorded on a call, and I'm going through my diagram presentation of the process, that he explained. So doing it this way makes you bulletproof, but no, there's people out there that are teaching it to where you just take over the loan and you get it transferred to your LLC or to your name. Then they sit back and sell you due on sale insurance, right? So you're paying them insurance premiums because they taught you to do it the wrong way. So if the bank calls the loan due, they'll apparently come in and pay that, I guess, if you have that insurance. Well, I just gave you the best insurance, doing it the right way.
Yeah, generally speaking, the lender just wants to, they don't want the houses. That's why they had jingle mail in 2009, 2008, right? They don't want the assets. They just want to know that the assets are continuing to be assets and everything's paid on time. But with that said, there are a significant amount of people that probably just had a couple puzzle pieces as we've gone here from the beginning, that you just put that middle piece in and you go, oh, okay, okay, wait a minute. So de facto, he just busted the myth that it takes money to make money. And if you do need the money to make money, then you're not going to be able to protect yourself anyway. No, you're making money without making money, with low-hanging fruit, and protecting yourself for now and 21 years into the future. So then, because you're not a target now, if you're just starting out, you're a target 5 years, 8 years, 12 years. Whenever your, tenant leaves and gives it over to the title company that the law firm that he described earlier, that's when you're the target, but you're protected for 21 years. That's the I thought anyway of a golden nugget strategy that just really made me go, whoa, those are some puzzle pieces put together that is incredibly smart and incredibly crafty. And I'm just asking myself, why have I not heard this put in this way before, in this order, like this diagram? I can't remember the documents that were leaked. Maybe you can remind me here. What were they? They were supposedly the elite's business structure of offshore accounts. And I can't remember what that was called.
Yes. God, was it the Venezuela papers or something?
Yeah, something like that. Venezuela, something like that, where it was just complex, over-the-top business structures and trust accounts that are both offshore and onshore, and a combination of both that kind of protects, that the quote-unquote elite use to protect their family wealth. And it's all very legitimate. It's all shrouded in mystery, and it's very daunting. Meanwhile, Gene's over here dropping knowledge, showing you that you can have by
Panama
the letter,
Papers.
What is it? Panama. That's what it is. The Panama Papers, right?
Yep.
And if you haven't seen the Panama Papers, I do look that up, because if you do have a net worth in the tens and 20 millions, you might want to look into that anyway. But nevertheless, we're talking about now you have no excuses. Now no one has an excuse, because you can both get it now with no money, protect yourself, and protect yourself in the future, all at the same time. Everybody wins. By the way, ask your title attorney about this. Why not? At this point, right? I did hear, on the note of Panama Papers, I did hear, and I was abroad and I didn't have the time to do the research, embarrassingly, that I wanted to, but there were recent laws that changed about trusts specifically, and they're getting rid of some of them. I can't remember the hyper details, and I wanted to ask you if you do or got wind of any of that.
So there's new laws coming, all the time, essentially, right? And here's the thing with trusts. Trusts are not subject to the statutory code. They're not subject to the judiciary. However, trusts can be legislated on their administration. Okay, so how a trust is administrated, that can be legislated. So that's the difference. And people have retirement accounts, money market accounts that they're going to use for retirement, but the way that money is dispersed determines the tax rate. So the law that recently changed was, it used to be that you could leave that money to a trust, And you would be able to save money in taxes by leaving it to a trust because it's not going to a person. And then when it goes into the trust, it becomes beneficial interest. So you're now not getting money anymore. You're getting beneficial interest. So it changed your tax rate that you had to pay. But now putting that money into a trust on I believe it's the Secure Act. And I want to be 100% on that if it's the Secure Act, but leaving that money to the trust, it now does not have any tax benefit. So that's one thing that when you get into the upper echelon of professionals and entrepreneurs, business owners, they're looking to save money on their taxes, right? At all times, because it's not what you make, it's what you keep. So that was one of the major changes, which is the Secure Act. It is the Secure Act too. I knew I was right on that. Usually you try to be anyway, but that changed retirement savings accounts. It's the Setting Every Community Up for Retirement Enhancement Act, Secure Act. So that was the most recent change. Now, there also, though, is litigation going around right now for LLCs and the Corporate Transparency Act. And the Corporate Transparency Act dictates that you have to fill out a BOI, right? And that's a beneficial ownership information form. And so trusts are the only way that the true owner can not have to fill that document out. But all LLC owners, as of right now, and this thing has been changing the last month, like every week or so, like there's an appeal that's upheld and then there's an injunction and there's not an injunction. So as of right now, you don't have to fill it out, but that could change tomorrow, So yeah.
I know this is not legal advice. Neither of us are lawyers.
No.
But what is
Right.
I mean, when I first heard that, again, I was abroad and I'm like, my first gut reaction was like, that is the antithesis of what doing business in America is supposed to be, with separate states and having a national registry and all that jazz. What does your gut tell you about the final? Because I've been following this too, and it's like, come on, guys. And even if they overturn it, what percentage do you think of people have already filed this out, filled it out and send it to them? So like, what does your gut tell you in terms of, are they going to overturn this thing or are they going to keep the BOI requirement?
My gut feeling is they'll probably keep the requirement for the BOI, and it's to me only because it is for state created creatures of the state, which are LLCs. So they're already controlled and owned by the state, because that's what an LLC is. You're basically franchising. You become another form of franchise for whatever state it is that you register that LLC with the Secretary of State. So I feel like they are. Now they say the BOI is only going to FinCEN, and that's the financial center for enforcement, I believe, something like that, financial crimes enforcement, one of those acronyms. So they're saying that they're going to keep that private. But for me, if you're already, you got that EIN and you got that with your social security number, you registered it with the Secretary of State, and then you fill out a BOI, you're already out there flapping in the wind. So if we're going to set up an LLC, what I recommend is making a trust, a personal property trust, the managing member. So now you're private as the beneficiary of that personal property trust. You're private because the trust is the one that is the managing member. And then your trustee's name is always the name. If there's like a deed or if there's a car title and you're putting these assets in trust, the trustee's name is always what's on public record. But here's the thing, man, this is a game. It's a game. It's Monopoly. And for those that think that that is just a saying, hey, more power to you, but it's true. So your trustee's name is on public record when you have a trust, because the trustee holds title to that asset. Well, for us, there's strategies within the strategy. So we put the trustee's initials, their first name initial, middle name initial, and then their last name. So it would be like G.R. Boykin as trustee. Well, you don't know if GR is a male, a female. You don't know their full first name. So that makes it harder to find out who that person is, who that trustee is, that would then be able to, tell you who the beneficiary is with a court order. So there's strategies within it that make it harder, and if you know these rules, then you can play by the high level elite rules. If you don't, well, then you're playing by the rules that they gave us and they put out there for us so that they could continue to win because somebody's got to pay.
I just muted. I thought I unmuted. Sorry. And by the way, if my mic is too loud, I'm hoping I can keep that door open. But I got a 2-year-old and a dog here, and it is what it is. So just let me know, and I can close at any point.
You're good. You're good.
Now you were dropping a ton of specialized knowledge here, and you had mentioned earlier you started out owning a landscaping company. Like, what was the transition mentally for you that said, okay, I got to stop. I need to own the land that I'm landscaping. What was that? Tell me about that journey.
Man, one of my mentors says, we're born looking like our circumstances, but we die looking like our decisions, and that hit home because a lot of times, people say I had it rough growing up, I'm a prisoner of my circumstances and stuff like that. But at a certain point, it's the decisions that we make, that dictate what our life is. And nobody cares about our circumstances after a certain amount of time in life. Right. So that said, I was sick and tired of my circumstances, and realizing that I was the only one that can control it. I had to make a decision. I had to be decisive, man. And so making a decision, like incision, you're cutting something. A decision, you are cutting something away and going with what was not cut away, right? And once I made that decision, though, I still didn't know how I was going to finance these properties. And, I didn't know how I was going to fix them. I didn't know how I was going to pay to acquire them. None of that. But I was gathering knowledge along the way. And I made the decision that one way or another, this was going to happen for me. And I was going to give it everything that I had. And like I said, I didn't know how I was going to finance these properties. So it took about 3 weeks for me to find subject to. And I'm digging, man. I'm digging. I mean, I'm on YouTube, no money real estate, no money investing, no money houses, right? No credit check. And it still took me 3 weeks to find it from a person that I connected with and that I believed, I'm not for everybody and everybody's not for me, right? And there's other people out there that teach this stuff. So once I found that information, I knew in my heart and in my soul that this was the game changer. But here was the thing. I was running a landscaping company, so I didn't have a bunch of money set aside. So I had maxed out my credit cards, man. I emptied out my checking account. I had lost my job when I made this decision. But when I found this information, I locked myself in the basement for 3 months studying bits and pieces of information here, there. I'd watch an hour-long YouTube just for 1 or 2 pieces of information that I needed because that was the free stuff and that was what I could afford at the time. But I knew. Here's the other thing. If we want things to change in our life, right? If we're not happy with the outcome of our income, we have to change the input. It's just a gap in knowledge. And we make decisions based on a made up outcome, right? And so we'll decide not to do something because we feel like we'll get a negative outcome. Oh, I don't know anything about real estate. I won't be good at this. We're basing that on a future negative outcome that we've made up in our mind. Or we can say there's other people out here doing this. I know that I'm smart enough to do it. I just need the right information. So I'm going for it because I know I can do it. So now I've made up this outcome, a positive outcome in my mind, a future outcome. So you just have to make that decision. One way or another, if it's possible, there's other people out here doing it. That means that, you can too. And so that's kind of the way I live life as well. And that's been a game changer for me, man. I started this in my basement. I mean, people can go back to my YouTube and see that, because this journey, I've been on this journey from day one, because when I found the information, I was like, dude, Everybody's got to know about this. So even when I was a nobody, man, like, not that I'm some great, big guy now, but when I had nothing and was getting my first houses all the way up until now, you can see that progression. So anybody can do it. You just have to decide, have the right information, and set your intention. This is the key right here, man. You make the decision, you set your intention, ignore distractions, continued learning, and with that, you gain confidence in your competence, and you're off.
I'm writing. I'm like literally writing that down.
To me, it's easy. It's like we have to set our intention. So we intend on reaching whatever goal that is. Now we have an objective, an ending point. So then we ignore distractions. Well, what is a distraction? Anything that's not pushing the needle closer to me getting to my goal. So I don't watch sports anymore, man. I might catch a highlight if I'm scrolling a little bit, but I don't have a team. I'm not a fanatic because they're not paying me and it's not helping me get closer to my goal. It's a distraction, right? So I ignore distractions and I give my attention to what's pushing the needle closer. In doing that, if I have continued learning of what I need to learn for whatever that objective is that I set, then I'm getting better and better each day. And so with that focused activity on that continued learning, I gain confidence in my competence. And when I'm confident that I'm competent enough to do something, I'll take action. That fear fades away. So to me, that's the recipe. And I've helped a lot of people around the country to become real estate investors that knew nothing about real estate or that were experienced in real estate and they wanted to scale. And then I've also helped people, to protect their assets, plan their estate, avoid litigation on a high level. So, you just have to have the right information and be willing to take action.
So even taking me back here to the landscape and company, I mean, there was an inkling inside of you, the entrepreneurial inkling from back then. I mean, did it start there? Or was there other, maybe, I don't know how to even say, I want to say it respectfully, but failed businesses before that one? Or like, where did this come from within you?
Yeah, I think I was a natural born entrepreneur. I mean, I was a below average student. I've quit and got fired from many a jobs, that I felt I should have moved up at when I didn't. And so I feel like I was always an entrepreneur. And then there were a couple of times where we, attempted to start businesses, but just didn't have the financing, didn't have the money for whatever reason. I mean, hell, me and a friend were going to open up a liquor store when I was 23 years old. We had the space. Everything was going good for us. We did our research with another liquor store. And then we went in front of the city for zoning and we didn't get the zoning because it was less than 300 feet away from a church. So they wouldn't do a variance to make it shorter because somebody came and objected. So that shot down a dream, and I just knew though, as I'm working and I'm selling my time, that I can't make enough money selling my time. Like there's no job that I can do short of being a doctor or an attorney where I can sell my time and make enough money. So I've got to figure something out. So I started studying real estate, man, years before I actually started doing it, and it got to a point though, where now I'm running this landscaping company. I had to work my way up doing that. I hated that job. And really the point for me, truthfully, was this. So my dad was a concrete finisher, man. So he didn't make much money. My mom had odd service jobs growing up, so we didn't have a lot of money. Well, when my dad would come home from work, he's a concrete finisher, man. So that concrete dust everywhere, he'd come home dirty. We'd run to kind of give him a hug or jump on him. And he'd hold on. At least let me take off my boots, or let me take a bath, and I would think to myself as a kid, like, geez, I just love you, Dad. I don't know, why you're mad about that. So fast forward, I'm running a landscaping company and, you running that weed eater, there's stuff shooting up at you and getting caught on your clothes. So I've got a 2-year-old daughter at the time and I came home from work and she ran up on me. And I felt myself start to do what my dad had did, like, oh, hold on, and I stopped myself, thank God, but I was conscious of that and I felt terrible about it. And I was like, man, something's got to change. Something's got to change. So from that moment on, that's why when I knew I had the first inkling of an opportunity, that I was going to take it. And crazy enough, opportunity came when I actually thought the world was crashing in. We lost a deal and I lost my job. That was the opportunity that I needed. That changed everything. So yeah, sometimes it doesn't look, that's what God's grace is. When you have faith, now faith that it's already worked, then all work that we do works. It's either working on us or it's working for us. And if it isn't working for us right now, that just means we have to be open enough to letting it work on us until we become the person for whom it will work for. If you do that, man, you're off to the races. You got to take the good with the bad.
I just got goosebumps on that story there when you wrapped it up with your, kind of your child. I mean, I also have a son who's about to turn 2, like literally. So it kind of hits home to me. And I grew up on a horse farm, so you're never not dirty, right? So that hits home more than you think, and that's wild to me, because there's, I've found on multiple continents there is a thing within people that you can't put there, right? And it doesn't really matter if you're talking about getting sober or if you're talking about business or just general motivation or personal development, like the decision aspect, right? Of that moment of like, I need to stop using alcohol, or I need to financially transform my life. I've got to figure X, Y, or Z. There's something there. And I truly believe there's something tangible within a decision more than a choice. That makes sense. You're not making a choice, you're making a decision. And multiple people have said this to me in a very similar manner with very different background stories. And you're like, man, that gave me some goosebumps here. So tell me then, I got to change my life. I don't want to go down this path. It's not that it's a bad path. It's not right for me, right? Because my grandfather, for example, was a metal fabricator. And at a certain point, I grew up in an entrepreneurial home. My dad was probably affected me more than anybody on earth, just watching that same process of growth and whatnot. What is the next thing you do? Like, I caught myself. I was conscious of the decision. Where am I going from there? You had said you had been diving into and studying already at that point for a minute. I mean, what was the first? Because you have to take action. You get a decision and then the action. What was that for you?
The decision, yeah. Without action, I mean, it means nothing. It's really just entertainment, essentially. So the first thing for me was making that decision inside, and then understanding that I have to work with what I have, not work with what I want, right? Because we don't have that yet. So I got to work with what I have until I get what I want. So how can I do that? What can I do? Right? Well, one, I've got to learn more. I've got to take action and learn more. And then for me, I live by it. He who has the deal has the power. Right. So because if you can bring a good deal to the table, you're going to find the money somewhere. So how do I find?
I don't mean to cut you off. I don't mean to cut you off
good.
Here. What he just said, way too many people rolled their eyes. Because if I had the deal, I wouldn't know who to bring it to, and I wouldn't know where to start with them. Way too many people. You know why I know that? Because it's been me. Yeah. A lot, right? Mm-hmm. But keep going. I'm sorry.
Yeah, he who has the deal has the power. So you don't. The problem is people think that they have to learn everything before they do something, right? And what we don't understand is that we won't learn anything until we do something. We got to take action. That's the best way to learn. So you do have to start by learning a bit about it, but then you got to get out there and swing that bat. So once I made that decision, that's when I knew I was going to use my skills that I already had that will translate a bit and adjust those, refine those. So I'm on YouTube University. I'm committed, right? And one thing about it is I didn't praise myself for results. I praised myself for my commitment. Like, damn, man, you were getting after it all week this week, and gathering that information, putting together your script, putting together your action steps. Like, I'm telling myself that I'm proud of me for doing that because I'm making that progress. And so being proud of my commitment versus the results that's what the results are a byproduct of our consistency and our commitment. So I was so consistent and so committed to gathering this information. There were people on YouTube that were my mentors before they knew that they were my mentors, and so I gathered that information, man. And once I felt confident in my competence, I took action to go out there and find a deal. This is literally what I said. He who has the deal has the power, because I didn't have any money. So my first deal, I got it under contract subject to. I owed the seller $12,000. I didn't have $12,000, but I had 30 days to close. So once I get it under contract, I can legally market that property. So I'm marketing the property for sale by owner, rent to own, no credit checks, down payment required. I got a $20,000 down payment. Before we needed to close, I got a $20,000 down payment because I bought that house by taking over the mortgage, and then I became the bank and I sold it on rent to own. So now I can get money on the down payment and make cash flow monthly on it. It's a win-win. And I'm helping a person in a hard situation, then helping somebody get affordable home ownership. I get the $20,000 down payment. I paid the $12,000 at closing. I even had to pay the closing costs, which were $3,000 some dollars. So I only really put in my pocket a few thousand. But guess what? I had an asset worth $120 some thousand in my hometown of Sioux City, Iowa, my very first house. And I was cash flowing $300 a month. So it truly is, he who has the deal has the juice, has the power, man. And that's how my first deal worked out from there. So from there, I knew that I could make it happen with no money. I just had to get after it in that timeline that I gave myself and that I was contracted to. Make sense?
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's where, $300 a month alone, if you stop there and you didn't continue applying, especially now and every day that goes by, more and more people, that extra 300 cash flow without selling more time, because you only got so much in a day, that's life-changing stuff for a lot of people, right? So, that's big. And one of the reasons why I wanted to even, ask about that, and kind of a follow-up, actually, I want to do this first. Who are you in high school? Like, who are you growing up? You told me about your family a little bit, but who are you in high school?
In high school, I was the athlete that had a lot of potential, but kept messing it up. That's who I was. Yeah, I was because I always tell people, I don't think I ever finished anything until I started to do this. And that's what happens to a lot of people in life. You get so close, and you never really finish anything. So that's kind of who I was. But I was also the woe is me person, whether it was, verbally or externally, but mostly internally, And so once I got over that is what changed everything. So it doesn't matter, where we come from, who we were, because we should be continually evolving.
You dive in, you take these actions, right? You've got this inkling, this itch within you, got to change things, start to change things. At what point did you decide, or I have a weird feeling it's not as much of a decision as you felt calling or like a responsibility, but at what point did you decide to start teaching this to other people?
Oh man. Actually, it's a crazy story because the first person who was my mentor that I saw on YouTube, back then he had like 70 some odd thousand subscribers on YouTube. And this was in 2021 that my first interview is still up on his YouTube page. His name is Chris Haskins. he was the first one that I saw do, subject to, and then explain it in a way that was, semi understandable to me, and it was good information. So that said, I was on like all his lives. I watched a ton of his videos with my notebook, taking notes. I'm asking questions in the comments. I'm leaving comments, all that stuff. So when I did jump out there and took action, when I got my first deal, I reached out to him and I was like, hey man, thank you for putting this information out into the ether so that I could find it. It worked. I got one. I just wanted to say thank you, and his contracts were the first couple of sets of contracts that I purchased. My partner purchased them for me because my money was so low. Well, when he went to purchase it, the page wouldn't let him check out. So I DM'd Chris Haskins on Facebook and let him know. And he responded right away because it was a little bit of money. So he fixed it. We got him. I just messaged him back. Hey, and I told him this too. I said, hey, we got the contracts. I appreciate it. I said, I'm not going to be bombarding you with questions and all that stuff. I said, but you will be hearing from me later because of the results I'm going to get. And lo and behold, I got my first deal. And when I got it, I reached out to him, thanking him, man, you're awesome. I appreciate it. Boom. He's like, oh man, that's cool, man. Hey, or he's like, oh man, that's awesome. Thanks for reaching out, letting me know. And then about 10 minutes later, his assistant reached out to me and asked if I wanted to do an interview on his YouTube. Now I live in Houston now, so I had to move to a bigger city. But back then I lived in Sioux City, Iowa. So I'm like, man, I'm a small town Iowa guy. He's got 70 some thousand subscribers. Hell yeah, I want to do an interview, So I do the interview, and 2 times in that interview, he called me a go-getter, just based off of what I said. And then from that interview, people were reaching out to me like, hey man, that's awesome. Do you want to sell your contracts? Can you coach me? All this stuff. And I'm like, wow, this is crazy, and maybe I should start something. And so that's where the Go-Getter family was born. I was like, damn, he called me a go-getter, and I am a go-getter. So, what can I do here? And so I started the Go-Getter family, man. I started making videos and helping people, but that started out in its rough patch as well, because I didn't know how to do that. We don't know how to do something. We've got to learn how to do it. And there's 2 things that can happen. We can go out there and learn by trial and error, and it takes time. It's almost like we're in a dark room looking for a light switch, but sometimes we run into the wall face first looking for that light switch, and turning on the light is really getting a mentor of some sort, because that collapses the timeline and it lessens the number of mistakes that we can make. You know what I mean? So that's what I ended up doing. And I blew up on TikTok first with a couple of videos, and it's been nuts since then. I mean, I've done some pretty crazy stuff, helped a lot of people. I mean, I'd never imagined that life would be, what it is now, or even that I'd have the impact that I've had, or that people I've helped would then impact people on their own. It's crazy. It's crazy.
A Ponzi scheme of giving. One thing I wanted to say is that you have been rolling into my next questions beautifully. And I don't know if it's intentional or unintentional, but what you were just describing there is in a positive way, a Ponzi scheme of giving, and giving the information and teaching people how to pick themselves up, maybe put on a better mindset and dive into the world, understanding that you don't need money to make money, to protect yourself now and 21 years into the future. You just got to understand who to get the information from, discern the information, and then debatably, most importantly, apply that information. And what I wanted to, kind of circle in here is, I know a lot of people in real estate that have made millions upon millions and millions, and they never can translate that online successfully. And you are crushing it with your content game here. And I wanted to ask you about what are some of those strategies for people to get into that? As you said, if you don't do something, you don't know how to do it until you start doing it. So in terms of the video world, where would people start?
Well, yeah, you got to start by taking that action, man, making videos, right? Not being afraid of criticism or not being everybody's cup of tea, because you're just not going to be, right?
And by the way, again, I apologize for cutting you off here. The reason why I'm asking this is I'm just guessing that you have met hundreds of buyers, sellers, contractors, plumbers, electricians from all over the United States that aren't even your customers slash clients, that you've probably inevitably done deals with or certain aspects of deals with that you never would have guessed. So this is very relevant for everybody in the space. So sorry about cutting you off there.
Yeah. Dude, when I first started, I'm thinking I'm going to be buying houses in Sioux City, Iowa, and I'm going to own a bunch of houses there. I own houses all over the country now because of social media, Mississippi, Florida, California, Texas, Iowa, Indiana, and that's because of the internet, and putting myself out there. It wasn't always easy. It isn't always easy. But then so you got to take action, be willing to feel like you look dumb, I guess, essentially, is because sometimes you might even look dumb. Hell, I'm sure I have plenty of times. Right. But the other thing is, I would say, is giving value. You can't, people sometimes are afraid of like, oh, I'm going to give all the information away and I'm going to give them my secrets and that, they're going to take it and go do stuff or what. First off, there's enough out there for everybody. So it's cool, and secondly, you want to give value. That's what got it. That's what did it for me, was giving actionable steps, and doing it. And then when I'm scrolling the internet, and scrolling social media, I'm not just doing it mindlessly. I'll see things that people are doing and it worked for them. So I'll add that element, or I'll take that and refine it a little bit and add that element to what I'm doing. But I still remember when I was doing the real estate, and then I started the Go Getter family. I didn't know how to be a teacher. I didn't know how to create repeatable steps and a process and a program, none of that stuff. So I paid a company, and they reached out to me in my Instagram DMs, and I thought they did well. So I went through their process, and what they were saying, was exactly what I needed. So I had to go out and borrow more money, even though I owned houses at that time. Truly, because I had to pay my debts from when I lost my job and was living on my credit cards and my checking account was empty. So when I did my first deals, I was catching up, and so when I found the information on how to, scale my business and reach a bigger audience, I was like, I got to do this, man. I got to do it. I was going to get a title loan on my car and some other stuff. But luckily I had two friends that loaned me a bit of money. I just talked to one of my friends. He's like, damn, man, I wish I'd have gave you more money, so I did that. I wanted to collapse that timeline because I got tired of running into that wall face first in that dark room, looking for the light, and that's what it did. It collapsed the timeline for me. And I still remember when my first video went viral, dude, I had risked it all again on my first event. And I had my event in Sioux City, Iowa, which was a miscalculation on my behalf. And so I didn't make the money that I thought I was going to make from that event. So I was down again. But I still knew I had something here, and I had the footage from that event because I did end up getting a reasonable amount of people there. It was great. It was life-changing for some. I just didn't make the money that I was supposed to. Well, 3 weeks later, a video goes viral. Boom, my first video on TikTok. And it's still up on there. It's got like 3.5 million, 3.6 million views. And so now it's like a fire hose going through a needle head. People trying to get in touch with me, wanting me to coach them, wanting to buy my course. So I reached back out to the people that I had paid, and I was outside of their program already. There's a timeline with all that stuff. And I was like, hey, now I had some value to bring. I got all these leads. I got these people that want me to mentor them. I can't handle all of this. I need your infrastructure. And so they helped. They got, part of the sales and helped me build out my system. And so it all comes from investing in myself and believing. Belief. When we believe, then we'll figure out the how. Everything I just told you was me believing, and then I figured out the how along the way when I'm in the midst of these situations. But belief is the strongest tool that we have.
And one thing led to another for you to build on that belief, right? You don't start with all the belief you need. You take one step at a time, right? And it just sounds like that's exactly what happened. I know we're running relatively short here on time, but I do want to ask, like, how did it help you in terms of these systems and processes? How did that help you when applying that to scaling deals and scaling other things? Because you had mentioned, something that's probably a little harder to find on the Go Getter family website and your information is that you do personal consulting, that people can fly you out. You talk about that on social media, but it's a little below there in your products, right? Specifically, I can imagine there's a reason for that, but I'll just leave it at that.
It's expensive,
right? And with that, right? But you're helping these guys solve some of these major problems, helping them scale. How did applying the digital assets in the digital world to real estate in the company help you with scaling as well? Because I think that's another element where people just get stuck. I can do deals, but I'm the guy. And that's it. I'm the guy. When I stop hunting, I stop eating. So talk to me about that.
Yeah. Well, success isn't a secret. It's a system, right? So if we put systems in place that are repeatable steps that each person can take, then you no longer are a business worker. You own an actual business. Because a lot of people are solopreneurs or business workers where, like you said, if I'm no longer hunting, I'm no longer eating. Well, what happens is we don't do the boring stuff first. The boring stuff is where the money is made. That's where people get rich. And so I have an outreach process. I have an intake process. It's step by step for each position. So I've went through a lot of different team members along my journey, from being alone, starting it in the basement, to building a team, but without a system in place. So the very first thing you want to do as an entrepreneur, especially if you're doing it in the digital world, is you want to have an outreach system. So how are you talking to people, communicating with people in your DMs? And then what is your intake? What is that process for when you do get on a call with them? What is that process, right? You have that. That's the nerdy stuff. You have to sit behind your computer and put that together. So that way, every person has the same experience coming in and then going through the process. So now when you have scaled to the point of where you're not the one that's talking to them anymore, because that used to be me, dude, I didn't answer your DM. Not the first one, my AI did, but I got a screenshot of it from my head of intake. And so that's how I knew that you DM'd me, because I have so many followers, it's hard to keep up. But I used to be the person that was, answering all the DMs, responding to all the comments. And so I had to systematize it. So if you do the boring stuff first, it takes a little bit of time. It takes more of your attention. But while you're doing the boring stuff, you can be more confident when you are going out there making those videos, because you won't waste those opportunities when they do come. That's the primary thing I could tell you. Do the boring stuff first. Build your systems.
And it's wild, you said it, and I think I don't know if you even, I hope everyone else caught what you said at the beginning of that, because you said it maybe so nonchalantly, but you basically said, I got too much intake, and instead of redoing what you did with real estate and spending the next 7 months, years, 3 years failing in the technology world, you partnered with guys to solve the problem now who are competent, right?
Exactly.
So especially in real estate, I think there are so many guys that have done very, very, very well for themselves, and they would consider themselves non-techie. If you're one of those guys, find someone that is, work with them, and come up with an arrangement. I guarantee you, just like you have apprehension about technology, they have apprehension about getting into real estate or trusts or wealth management. Like there's this daunting aspect. Absolutely. Everybody's human. So that's like, if you're not going to do one way, do it the other way and reach out, connect with them, see if you'd be surprised how many people are willing to hear you out. At a minimum, hear you out. And you go, what do you mean you've got too many leads to handle? Like, that's like a digital, in the digital asset world, that is like a dream come true, you know, to hear. So it's but so many people just like, they close their app and they never think, and they just move on from it, and they keep that, you know, problem. And I don't want to say, I will say, they don't capitalize on it, and they don't move to the next step. And it sounds to me, all the way at the beginning, to bring this whole thing full circle, that I've noticed with a repeatable pattern with you is it's been like climbing stairs, and you come to the next step that you're not, let's say, tall enough to get up, but it's like when you're getting there, you're not climbing 10 steps. You're not jumping a wall. You're taking one at a time. And then you're going, all right, what can I do now? What can I do now? Okay, technology is my problem now. Well, these guys got this. And okay, financing is my problem now. Okay, subject to. And okay, mindset's my problem. Well, I'm going to need to figure this thing out. I mean, how many people are involved in courses that don't reach out to the guy that founded it when they have a simple problem like, oh, I'll just get the contracts in a different place?
Right.
Crazy. The worst case scenario is you are in the same spot because he doesn't respond. Like, but he happened to at that time, and I'm assuming that changed your life on top of all the other life-changing things, right? So powerful stuff there. I really hope other people caught that as well, because you said it kind of casually. Well, Gene, I have a weird feeling that we're going to need to do a part 2 not too long in the future. And I want to dive into maybe some double click on some of these topics and go into some hyper details if you'll give me the time.
Yeah, I'm cool with that, man. I love talking about this stuff. It's been a great conversation. So yeah, I'm definitely open to that. That'd be awesome.
Oh, it's amazing. Gene, like I said, thank you so much for your time, man.
For sure. I appreciate it. It was great.